Hello, my fellow Rubyists. If you watched my last video, then you watched me test out the new Google IDE anti-gravity building this application. I built this application using Gemini 3 and then Claude Sonnet 4.5 to compare the two models. The application is a basic invoice tracking system that I can use for my business. You can see it has basic dashboard, customers, projects, and invoices. It allows me to send these invoices to my customers and track their payment workflow. While Gemini 3 did a good job, overall, it did not compare to the final result that you see here, which is Claude Sonnet 4.5. Today, for the first time, I'll be using Claude Opus 4.5, a model recently introduced, and at this point in time, today is December 1st, 2025, is being offered at the same price as Claude Sonnet 4.5 in Cursor. I have been using this model for the past few days, and so far I can say I am super impressed with it. And before this offer expires, which will be on December 5th, I want to go ahead and create a video. And today I'm going to create this same application we created before, my invoice tracking application, and see how the final result compares to Gemini 3 and Claude Sonnet 4.5. I will be using the same prompts I used with Gemini and Sonnet. As you can see here, I've chosen Opus 4.5 as my model, and I'm going to be in agent mode, and I'm going to go ahead and prime the context by asking the model to take a look at the project and give me a brief summary about it. And as expected, our project summary looks good, covering the tech stack, the current features, which is just authentication at this point in time, database schema, and covers a little bit about the route not being defined yet, which is pretty typical in a new Rails project. So we'll need to get that defined to the dashboard as soon as that becomes available, and then gives me a nice little summary paragraph. And now I'm going to hit it with our first prompt, which is basically gives Opus an architectural overview and asks it to create two global components that will be used throughout the application, a modal dialog box and a toast notification system. The purpose of this video is not to show the performance of the models. My experience so far has been that Gemini 3, Sonnet 4.5, and Opus 4.5 are not the fastest models, but I'm not using them for speed. I'm using them for accuracy. In this case, I'm just trying to measure the quality of the output. So I will be pausing the video while some of the generation takes place, or in some cases speeding it up substantially. So Opus is done with our first task, and you can see here all of the files that were created or modified. We can see that we have stimulus controllers for both the modal controller and the toast controller. And we also have partials, which I like to see for our modal and our toast, which tells me it's probably going to use turbo streams. And if I come over here to the results, it looks like it did a really good job of describing what it built, talking about the toast notification system, and explains how to use it, as well as the modal dialog system and how to use that. And then it also says that it went ahead and updated our authentication screens to use the new toaster. So I'm going to go ahead and open the browser and check this out and see how it did. So you can see on the default root URL, I'm just landing on the typical Rails page here, project page here. But I'm going to go to session new, and I've created a test user already. And so we can see we have our first issue, which again is that root URL, and we need to have Opus correct that. So along with the error message, I'm going to prompt Opus with the prompt. Once I log in, I am getting the error below and didn't see the toast notification yet. Can you generate an empty project dashboard and set it as the root for now? We'll work on it later. Opus has finished generating our dashboard, so we're going to go ahead and try logging in again. As you can see now, we have a basic dashboard that was created, but I did not see the toast notification. I do, however, see the toast notification if I attempt to log in with an invalid user. I believe this is because the turbo stream cannot be rendered when you're doing a redirect in the session controller, which I think is what's going on here. So I'm going to prompt Opus for an architecture change. I'm going to say, looking good so far. I'm able to see the toast notification when I type in an invalid email and or password. I do not see the toast notification upon success. I believe this is because the create action in the session controller redirects and therefore cannot send a turbo stream. Can we modify the architecture such that if there is a flash message, alert, or notice in the response, the related stimulus controller will render the toast using JavaScript? This way, we can use turbo streams when appropriate and redirect when appropriate. Also, will you modify the session controller accordingly? Opus responded saying, "You're absolutely right. The redirect prevents turbo stream responses. Let me create a smarter architecture where the stimulus controller automatically picks up flash messages on page load/navigation." And then it's giving me an overview of how it accomplished that. And then it talks about the new architecture. So this extra prompt and the model's response highlights the reason why I ask these models to generate a toast controller system as well as a modal dialog controller system is because it's not as easy as it seems. When you're dealing with turbo streams and turbo frames, and then also redirects, this is one of the challenges the model will face, and I want to see how it responds. So far, none of the models have been able to get this right on the first time. The question is, how does it look now? We'll start by trying an invalid user. And sure enough, we still get our prompt. And let's go to a valid user. And sure enough, we are now getting our success toast notification. With toast notifications and modal dialogues out of the way, I'm now going to hit Opus with our large one-shot application prompt. If you watched my last video where I test Google's anti-gravity IDE, then you may have noticed that it did a lot for me. It automatically created my test user and ran through test scenarios in the browser and fixed errors as they came up. It's a little buggy and it took it quite a bit of time, but I'm pretty excited where they're going to go with this. This is pretty impressive for a first release. But of course, in order to test Opus, today I'm back in Cursor. Opus is done generating what it calls the MVP for the application. And you can see there are a lot of files here, including a job that marks overdue invoices, a scheduled job, which I think is pretty cool. And over here is giving us a really good summary of what it finished and what it has yet to finish. Looks like it has basic CRUD operations for our customer project and invoices, and talks about being a reactive UI with Turbo, which we asked for as far as architecture goes, invoice workflow, dashboard, some navigation, and then it says next steps for later, PDF invoice generation and download, more detailed reports and analytics, line items on invoices, and email notifications. Okay, let's take a look at our Opus Tally MVP. So we see we're still getting our toast notification. Looks great. Everything seems to be very smooth and responsive. And from my first impressions, I'm going to say that I really like this layout. Looks like it's very streamlined. In fact, I would dare say that I like it so far better than what I got out of Sonnet 4.5. But let's go ahead and use it a little bit and see what we have. Clearly on the dashboard, it looks like we have some information that I'd be interested in: outstanding invoices, total paid this year, overdue invoices, and recent invoices and active projects. And then also some nice handy links here to view all in both cases or create either invoices or projects. I'm going to see what happens when we try to create an invoice. Looks like it's using our modal dialog controller, which I really like. Some of the other implementations did not use modals. They actually use new pages for CRUD operations. So this is our invoice, but it says I can't really do anything unless I have a project. I'm going to see what happens if I click on it. Yeah, and it gives me a nice message saying that I have to have a project. So that's good so far. Very good user experience. Same thing with projects. It looks like I need to create a customer, and it's giving me some validation here to make sure that I have the right data in order to create a project. I'm going to start by creating a customer. And I was able to create the customer successfully. And you can see I have the proper toast notification. Let's see if our customer is there. It looks like they are. Looks like I have a few action buttons here. One looks like it's to edit. And I'm not sure what the plus is. Oh, it looks like it gives me a little toolbar tip saying I could add a project from here, which I think is kind of nice. Let's take a look at the customer. And yep, we can edit in a modal dialog box. Can I click on this to view the customer? No, it looks like the only view of it is in the modal, which is fine by me because it has limited data at this point. If we ever added more to the customer, we could create a separate page for it. So let's go ahead and from here add a project. Looks like it automatically create or chooses our customer. And I'm going to leave the start date as today. I'm going to create an end date for the end of the month. I'm going to say it's an hourly rate, and I'm going to put it at, let's just do the 150 that it says here. And the status is active. So let's create the project. And it looks like we've created our project. I go over to projects, it looks like it's here, and it looks like we can use our basic filters, and it looks like they're working properly as well. And here I have a few different, again, action buttons here, one to edit, one to create, and I'm assuming this is probably an invoice. Yep, create invoice. So I really like this user experience. I think it's really good. I can also delete, obviously. If I go over to invoices, it looks like I don't have anything yet. Let's go ahead and create an invoice for this customer. Automatically sets the issue date to today and the due date, the end of the month. I'm going to change this just so that we have something different. I'm going to give it the 16th, and we've created an invoice. So now if I go over to invoice, I can see my invoices. And once again, I have action items over here. One to edit the invoice, delete, and then this one looks like I can mark it as sent, which I think is pretty cool. And so far, again, I have these quick filters up here, and it looks like they're all working. So it's draft until I mark it as sent. Let's try marketing as sent. Gives me this nice little confirmation. I say yes, gives me a toaster notification, and now it is marked as sent. And then let's see what the next step in the flow is. Mark as paid. Okay, so great. So now we can see that we can filter it by sent, and that seems to be working. Let's create another invoice. So we're going to select our project. And we're going to say Billy worked 10 hours, and we're going to leave that blank too, and we're going to make this one due. Let's make it due tomorrow. Okay, and then you can see it's created that one, and then I'm going to mark it as sent as well. And so far, this feels very reactive. It feels just like you're using like a SPA application, which is what I asked for. You don't see any full page refreshes going on here. Everything is handled through Turbo. And so now you can see it has our outstanding invoices, recent invoices, paid this year, overdue, and we have none that are overdue. So like I said, so far, I'm super impressed with this. I haven't really ran into any issues with it yet. I'm sure if I tried a little harder, I could come up with some issues, but so far, right out of the gate, it seems to be working excellent. And being honest, this is the one I'm going to move forward with for my company to use as an invoicing system. So I think that's pretty exciting, even over the Sonnet 4.5 model, which was also really nice looking, and definitely over Gemini 3, which I thought the user interface needed a lot of work. So that's it for this video. Hope you liked it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would really help me a lot. Also, give me a thumbs up down below. And if you have anything to say, go ahead and feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.